Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, Stephen Stark. Joining me, as always, over there we got John. Way over there we got Nessie, the regulars. But we're also very happy to welcome back to the channel Cecilia. You did the first half of this season with us. We're going to talk about it. The first one was 5 episodes. We talked about that, but thanks for coming back, Cecilia.
No, thanks for inviting me back. I'm always glad to be here.
It was a blast to have you. You're a great guest. And then making her triumphant return is Maester Merry. Merry, it's been a minute since we've had you on.
It's been a minute. I'm happy to be back. Happy to be talking about Mando.
Yeah, so is there a reason you've been busy this year? Something going on?
Just other stuff. I got Clint and I have our podcast, and it's just the 2020. So I've got the 2020 bug. It makes life hard.
That's where I was trying to lead you to the Learned Hands podcast, which is fantastic. I'm sure most of you guys out there watching this are at least aware of it. But if you want the greatest legal analysis of the Song of Ice and Fire anywhere on the planet, it's the Learned Hands podcast.
The great thing about picking a niche is that the smaller the niche, the greater chance you have of being the best at that niche.
That's true.
Good thinking. Good thinking, yeah.
So, thanks for joining us, everyone who's here. We're going to be talking about The Mandalorian, chapter 14, 15, 16. The last 3 chapters, which I am going to just call the Fett arc, or the Boba Fett arc. Because it was chapter 14 where we got him, and he played an instrumental part in both 15 and 16. So I haven't really thought that far ahead about what format or what order we're going to talk about things in. And there's a part of me that just wants to rush to the end and say, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. But I feel like maybe we shouldn't do that. Shouldn't bury the lead.
Well, this show is called The Mandalorian.
It is called The Mandalorian. So I guess maybe we should talk about Din Djarin and Boba Fett and Bo-Katan and
Billy Burr.
Yeah, okay. The one played by Sasha Banks, who did a DDT to Mandalorian through a table, and it was awesome. So, I'm going to start with our guest. Merry, it's been the longest for you, and you're also the biggest Star Wars fan I know.
That sounds like it sounds almost like an insult, but I'll take it.
I promise you it's not.
It's not.
It's really not. You are an expert.
So what do you want me to pick out, like something I want to talk about from the last
sure. You know what? I love it.
I think the episode that sort of surprised me the most in how good it was the Believer. So that's the Mayfeld episode.
Right.
And I just thought that there was a lot of there was some homage to like Vietnam War films going on in there. You got this really fun sort of video game style arc with delivering the refinery fuel, which is something I think Mando does really well, right? It's a little kind of RPG style fun, right? So you get that, and then the payoff for that being this bar scene with Mayfeld and his former Imperial boss was great. It was like, it almost reminded me a little bit of the bar scene in Inglourious Bastards, just in the level of tension there. And I just thought it was overall a really good episode, and good in a way that I didn't expect. And I think that it's easy to pass over because you have the episode before it, the tragedy where the thing happens and Boba Fett shows up. So that's a lot. And then, you have that thing that happens at the end, the rescue episode. And so I want to give some love to The Believer. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. It was fantastic. Bill Burr really sold me on that whole performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how they just keep picking up the threads from season 1. It's like, here's a little sprinkle, here's another little sprinkle, and let's go back and get this guy. In the first season, it was the episode "The Prisoner," and then here he is. He's the prisoner in this episode, so it's kind of like the prisoner redo. We got to bust somebody out of prison. So, and.
I was just going to say, I like that they take, if you're looking at these 3 episodes as a set, you have that middle episode that deals with a lot of thematic ideas, whereas both the tragedy and the rescue are very much centered around the story of Grogu, and he gets captured in one and then rescued in another, and that middle chapter is a kind of looking at the ideas of what can you live with, at what point do you keep to your sort of code or creed, and it just, and you have that great monologue by the guest star Richard Brake playing the Imperial officer that's dealing with what do people want? Do they want freedom or order? And a lot of these heavy ideas, you have that breather in between those 2 bookend episodes, and I really like that. On my rewatch today, that episode really stood out, even more so than it did before.
Yeah, I think it might be just my favorite of the 3, and I love all 3 of them. But I just thought it was great, and I love that they make that Mayfeld's background as a sharpshooter pay off. That he gets to take this shot and use his training by the Empire against the Empire, and the tie-in with "You Gotta Sleep at Night." I just thought it was great, and it could have been ham-fisted, and it wasn't. I just thought it was really wonderful. I just have so much great to say about all 3 of those episodes, and I didn't want the middle one to get left out in the cold because I thought it was so good.
Well, I really agree, Mary. Like, so much happens in the tragedy, and so much happens in the rescue that are like, has our Star Wars hearts just going, yay, nostalgia, it's awesome. But like, to see this side, the ground level, what really struck me is I've never in my life gone, thank God, TIE fighters before. Never.
Right.
I know. Well, I like 2 things about this episode particularly. The first one is that we get to see a side of the Empire that we don't often get to see, and it has to do exactly with with that feeling that you felt when those TIE fighters showed up and saved Mando and Mayfield. And the other thing that I really, really loved about this episode was the performance of both Bill Burr and obviously Pedro Pascal. And because you get to see, they really show you the tension of the moment. I love that the rest of the Empire crew cheer them up because they were able to deliver the fuel, and then you get a lot of uncomfortable situation for everybody that really build up the tension of the moment, and this tension was released in the final fight, right, when they were able to escape. But one thing that I actually mentioned this in my podcast in the episode that I released last Thursday, is that I really liked particularly the performance of Pedro Pascal, because you can really see how uncomfortable he is without his helmet, how used this Din Djarin is to his helmet, that he actually every single movement that he makes, it makes it as if he had the helmet on, and you can see that he's nervous. You can see that he lost all his confidence, and that he really is afraid under that mask. He really gets scared under that mask, and that is something, that is a detail that I really appreciated from from this episode, and well, of course, all the action, right?
They did not skimp on the action in any 3 of these episodes, in any of them.
Right.
Yeah, but I think what makes the middle episode so special is I think my favorite moment, not just of this episode, but one of my favorite moments throughout the whole season is just when he does remove his helmet. And it's not even done in a super dramatic way. He tries to put it off as much as he can, but once he makes that decision, it just comes right off. And he's prepared to do that for Grogu. There's no length he won't go to rescue him. And it was just really emotional seeing that, just Pedro's acting, what he put into that moment where you can see how much he cares about Grogu. And
yeah.
And I think even more so than when we saw his helmet come off briefly last season, now that I've seen the helmet come off both in this moment where we get to actually see him react and stuff, and also, of course, in the last episode.
Right.
I think now, like, even when he has the helmet on, it's just going to add such a different dimension to the character and how we perceive him.
Yeah.
I think they did a really good job as well weaving that in with his interaction with Bo-Katan, because you have, Bo-Katan explaining, y'all, you are part of this extremist sect. We are Mandalorians and we take off our helmets. And you have him initially resisting to that, but then, you have him out of necessity for Grogu taking it off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the next season whenever we get it. Because I think it's likely to focus heavily on, Din's interactions with Bo-Katan and her crew. And so I think that they did a really good job developing that both emotionally and kind of the significance of it to the story as well. And I think it felt very earned, right? It wasn't just that Pedro's performance felt good. It didn't feel forced to me. It felt like this sort of natural part of the story. And I thought that was great, because there's been a lot of criticism, I think, in season 1 of the decision not to have him take off the helmet and then to continue that. And I think the way that it paid off in these last 3 episodes was great.
Yeah.
And it earned a lot of trust for me in these storytellers.
Yeah, and as much as I love Pedro Pascal, anyone who's following me on Twitter can tell how much I've been talking about Pedro Pascal lately. I have a massive crush on him. As much as I have a massive crush on him, I really expect from the future seasons to continue this dynamic of not showing his face that much, because, well, whenever he takes off his helmet, it's very significant to the story.
Yeah.
So if we get to see I do expect that we will get to see a lot more his face, because of the situation with Bo-Katan and explaining that not every Mandalorian follows that very strict code. But I do expect to see his face in a dramatic moment,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Dan from Voice of Geekdom's got a great question. Do you think the Death Watch will excommunicate him for taking his helmet off? In a word, yes. I think so. Anybody else have a different opinion?
I don't. I do have a different opinion, because, well, I believe I'm not a Star Wars expert on anything, but I do believe that he took his helmet off for a good reason. For example, in the Believer episode, he took his helmet off for the benefit of the mission that he was accomplishing. So technically, he wasn't just
many oaths that make you swear and swear.
It's a lot of gray areas, so we don't really know.
Well, it's funny because I actually have a different perspective on that, where I think that they probably would, and I question whether he should care at this point, because he now knows that he was raised basically in a religious cult, and he's been lied to by the armorer, who spun these tales of, you know, the Mandalorian way, and also the history of their interaction with the Jedi, which we know is patently false. You know, she talks about, you know, the Jedi are these, you know, sorcerers from an ancient age that we did war with, which is, you know, partially true, but she left out the part where the Mandalorians have been in contact and even fought alongside the Jedi in time since then. So she told a lot of lies to Din Djarin, and
Yeah.
so I don't know that he should put much stock in their ways.
Yeah, well, it would be like trying to learn about the history of Earth from an underground group of like Nazis or something.
I mean, I think that we also, so Filoni and company that are in charge of this story, and Favreau, who are in charge of the story at this point, they have the ability to go back and kind of, you know, retcon a lot of this. And I think that we don't know a lot about what happened after the purge. In fact, we don't have a lot of history about the purge itself. So, I mean, I kind of think that the answer to this is that it's in the hands of the storytellers, and it's one of these things in the hands of the showrunners. And so it's one of these questions where I don't have a strong opinion on it either way, because I feel like the story hasn't necessarily given us that much information in world. Like, we don't really know that much about, you know, we don't know that much about how like Din's tribe offshoot of the Children of the Watch has operated, and whether or not they, you know, it may be that they weren't privy to everything that has happened, you know, with Bo-Katan, because we don't know how fragmented Mandalorian society has become. So this is one of those questions where I just say I don't have an answer yet, and I think that it's something that will likely be resolved, and we'll just see.
Yeah, and if it's
Just the
Filoni,
beginning. Go ahead.
no, Nessie, by all means.
Okay, well, I was just going to say, well, this is just the beginning of Din's journey away from this cult-like mentality. And you or anybody you know, if you know someone who has been involved in that type of society, or maybe insular family group or what have you, where all of your thoughts and all the information that you know has been given to you with this certain slant, and once you come out into the wider world, you have to relearn all of these things and make your own decisions. And we see, you know, I think that is part of his journey right now. He's had a couple of episodes to think about the things that Bo-Katan told him. He's kind of let it marinate in the back of his head. He's done some things, but you can tell that it's always back there in his mind. And even when he was he had a conversation with Mayfield about that. You know, it's like, if you take that helmet, you know, Mayfield's like, if you take that helmet off, you're going to be able to put it back on. You know, it was even addressed in the episode. So, you know, it's always there in the back of his mind, but you can tell that things are changing. He's kind of broadening his horizons, so to speak, or his thoughts, as he's coming in contact with more and more Mandalorians and Jedi. So, you know, we're going to be on this journey with him as, you know, he discovers the truth about, you know, what Mandalore is now.
Well, it's interesting. I guess I'm in the position where I'm having fun really theorizing about a lot of stuff. But as the good folks at the Force Center podcast often say, speculate responsibly. And so that's what I try and do. But I can't help but, you know, think about, you know, we know that Din Djarin was rescued by Death Watch during an attack by separatist droids. Presumably during the Clone Wars. So I feel like those that rescued him knew exactly the dynamic of Mandalorian society and the Jedi and all that. And I've said this before elsewhere, where I actually am pretty sure now, although I'm willing to, you know, leave room to be proven wrong, that the armor is in fact Rook Kast, who was one of Darth Maul's lieutenants during the Clone Wars. But, you know, I could be wrong about that, but I suspect that's where we're headed. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm very interested to see as these layers get pulled back next season, because I do feel like next season will be all about the Mandalorian, sort of, you know, the Mandalorians trying to recapture their home planet, and it'll get into a lot of these inner politics.
Yeah, super excited to see this show go in that direction. And I'm excited to see it, to see the dive into the Mandalorian lore, and I think that they have really big plans for it.
I hope so. Well, we've been going for 20 minutes and we've got nothing but talk about specifically the middle of the three. But I'm here for it. It was actually a great episode. Like, one of the things that gives me, and we've all talked, you know, we talked about him taking his helmet off and and how great Pedro was in that moment. It just that the way you see Din always in control. You know, he doesn't walk into a room he doesn't know how to shoot his way out of. But just to see him, how out of sorts he is, how literally he can't even respond to the officer who's addressing him. I really should look up. The actor is Richard Brake,
who was the Night King, the first Night King, which, you know, in my humble opinion, they should have kept him because he's got a really mean face.
He does.
He scares the crap out of you.
So emaciated looking too.
Yep. But it just proves that the Empire will take you no matter where you're from. Because he's from Space, North Carolina, I think.
Space Charleston.
Right. Well, I literally looked it up because I had to know. He was born in Wales, but he was raised in North Carolina, Tennessee, and Atlanta area. So
Space Chattanooga?
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I just really love, like, we can probably just keep going on and on about that scene when they're sitting down, but, like, that's the last direction that I expected Bill Burr's character to take, you know, to be the guy who couldn't live with this knowledge that this thing that has scarred him is going to happen again, but it's going to be even worse. And so he made basically a suicidal decision to ensure that it won't happen. And it's just, he gave one hell of a performance.
Yeah.
It ended up just becoming such an interesting commentary on like how people deal with like oppression and trauma, because he is constantly making all of these jokes and like saying Mando is taking himself too seriously. And it just, the way that it recontextualized his whole prior speech about like everybody has a breaking point and you got to do what you need to sleep at night. I thought it was really powerful, and it's interesting because it's powerful to me as a viewer, because I had sort of prejudged his character as like this asshole write-off character. And I think the writing and the direction just accomplished this awesome turnaround for him.
Let me interject for 1 second. Sammy popped in to say hi. She said she's not staying, but she gave us greetings from Mom Rixian and Dad Rixian. So, hello, Mom Rixian and Dad Rixian.
Rockin' my Sammy work tonight. I love my ghost sweaty. Ghost hoodie.
Rixian.threadless.com. Okay, what were you saying, Mary?
That's it. I was just saying that the way that they accomplished turning around his character arc, I think it was really just meaningful. It was meaningful to me. It's the kind of story I want to see more in Star Wars.
In one episode, too.
Yeah, never did I think that I was going to like cheer for a former ex-stormtrooper.
Hey, look at my stormtrooper, asshole.
He's a sharpshooter.
Sharpshooter, whatever, an Imperial. I never thought, I would like cheer for an Imperial. And then this guy comes along with his story, and he's just like Joe Average, Joe Average Imperial, soldier, and he's got his own story. He's got his own reasons. He's been through a grinder where they just chewed him up and spit him out. So
Nessie, the churn. He was through the churn.
he went through the churn, man, and sometimes you float and sometimes you sink. So
Yeah.
But-
Sorry.
yeah, and like you were saying, Mary, how he deals with his trauma and PTSD with jokes and deflection and that coming off as a wise ass or whatever. No, I don't know anybody like that. So,
I do. I actually mentioned it in a Coco episode. That maybe people won't understand why Mexicans make fun of death. Well, it's because we deal with death a lot. So, and it's a coping mechanism. But yeah, one of the things that I love about these new deliveries from the Star Wars universe is that we get to see all of these great areas of all these so-called bad characters, bad people, that they have a story. They became what they became because of a reason. And we get to see that not everything that the New Republic makes, it's okay. and this is one of the things that I really love, because I don't really like characters that are very one-dimensional. I like to see all of the faces, all of their flaws, and in a way, the Star Wars universe itself is a character. So we're going to see this in these new deliveries from Disney. And I particularly loved this portrayal in Rogue One, and now we see it in the Mandalorian, because Mando had to kill those pirates, and those pirates were actually going to do something positive because they were going to stop something that the Empire was going to do with that fuel.
It's funny how you don't really think of that in the moment, because you just think these are pirates again, who are putting your main character in danger. But once you reflect back on it, yeah, it's like, wait, they're actually trying to stop the Empire from doing something.
That's part of. Someone mentioned in the chat that Rick Fukuyama was the director of this episode, and I just nothing but praise for his direction, because I think that moment where they're saved by the TIE fighters, I think you're so wrapped up in the action of the moment that you don't realize that you were rooting for the bad guy. But then the TIE fighters come in, and from that moment, when all the bad guys are cheering for the good guys, right? Because they did the bad guy thing, it's this excellent sort of turnaround inversion. And it was just, to me, so masterfully done.
Yeah.
Right. If we're talking about the Western genre, which this absolutely is, this would be somewhat like, say, the ex-Union soldier or the ex-Confederate soldier tag team buddy type movie, where they're on a mission. And so you've got the ex-Confederate soldier who's out west, like a Jesse James type character, or
I absolutely
or
what's it pushed it towards the Wild West. It was
right.
wonderful.
So you're not really like, okay, we didn't root for the Confederacy, but here's this guy, he's out in the Wild West, he's got his own past and what have you, but he's doing this thing now. So it kind of makes you you put that part behind, even though it seems to still come up, because everybody is just dealing with this in their own way in this war. You have a lot of ex-war heroes, or
Veterans.
Everybody's the hero,
Veterans.
Depending on which veterans. Yeah, we'll just call them veterans, because
heroes die.
yeah.
Veterans are survivors.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And actually, the thing with politics is that the big characters are doing their thing, and we don't often get to see what the rest of the people that suffer from those decisions that they take, how is it going with them? And this is a little insight to that. That's lovely.
And the Mandalorians, actually, this show has done that a few times up till now. They've showed us that sort of, because it takes place mostly in the Outer Rim, where neither the Empire nor the New Republic have any sort of like real power projection in that area.
Right. The Empire couldn't control it, and before that, the Republic couldn't control it, and now the New Republic really can't. So it is the Wild West. It always has been.
I know it really does go back to the speech at the end of last season from why can't I remember his the client who gave that speech about I see nothing but destruction and death. Have things really changed? And I think we tend to remember the line that follows that more, the I would like to see the baby, but but that speech really is, it's mixed with truth. It's for a lot of people in the Outer Rim, things are just as bad, and we said that.
Yeah.
Things really haven't changed for those guys. They're still struggling and scrapping and trying to make a living the best way they can, no matter who they're paying their taxes to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's two more things I want to make sure I say about this episode, but one kind of is a better knock-on for previous episodes. So I'll just say, I know that the focus was not on Cara Dune or Fennec Shand, but they still had their part to play, and it was nice seeing them be like snipers on the ridge and just taking care of business up there.
Yeah, they did a hell of an Overwatch, is all I'm going to say.
Yeah. And again, they weren't the focus of the episode per se, but it was. I just really appreciated that.
And I think what's really impressive about this episode is the focus of it. We get those moments with the two of them, but like you could say that that Bill Burr's character Mayfeld. Right? Is almost the protagonist, or at least co-protagonist, along with Din Djarin in this episode. And the fact that comes right after the episode where you get, Boba Fett, it's like, it's his star episode where, he comes into the story and, wherever we're just going to call it the Boba Fett episode. The fact that they let him take more of a backseat in this episode, although he does still have some really cool moments, just shows that we can call it fan service, but it's good fan service, and they know when to pull back on it to refocus for what this episode needed to be, and I think that's quite impressive.
Yeah, talk about being glad to see TIE fighters showing up. Whoever thought that you would be excited to see the Slave One show up at the nick of time, Whoever thought that after, all the prequels and, the first trilogy, and then, what, Slave One was, and then to just see it showing up, like, yes, there it is.
That fucking bomb that he drops at the end, like
Seismic charge,
the sonic charge, like that's fan service I was there for, because that's all the way back to Attack of the Clones. So I knew you had to love that, Mary.
Oh yeah, I was so excited, and I guess that's one of the things that gets me about, and you're on the same page with me on this, John. It's just like, if fan service is one of those buzzwords that people throw around because they're just, I don't know. They feel like they don't like other people being happy. I don't know. And I just, there are times when things are, you can call it derivative or whatever. But I think incorporating references to your world in a way that makes the viewer react emotionally when it makes sense, sure, it's fan service, but like you said, it's good fan service. And being able to incorporate those story elements, that's something that Filoni does so well. It's something that this show has done so well. And I don't feel like at any point these episodes got too insular with their references, because the things that they do, it's just like, it's cool, even if you don't know what it is, even if you don't catch the reference,
And also, Filoni learned from the master. Lucas started off making these stories, call back and be circular and to come back around. So it is funny. I've even been guilty of this, before I take time to go back and reevaluate. But when people say fan service, Lucas was the original, person to do that kind of thing, because if you look at all the references within the original trilogy, but especially once you get to the prequels, things that call back to those original movies, and it's rhyming with, within each generation, there's echoes. And so I think, and Filoni is basically a godsend to all of us, I think, because he really did learn all the best lessons from Lucas. And I think as far as quote unquote fan service goes, I feel pretty safe when Filoni is involved, and Jon Favreau has just done an amazing job as well.
Favreau gets the action movie genre. He just gets it.
Yeah.
He gets how to make it work, and it's a magic that's beyond my level of comprehension. But I think he gets it.
The challenge that he got was to help put it in a modern frame of mind, and it rang true to the form. He did something. It was one of those hold my beer moments, Watch this. I've got this.
Well, we have pretty seamlessly transitioned into talking about episode 14 here.
Which, can I just say, when this episode starts off with the episode title, The Tragedy, my heart sank.
Yeah, it's
right. Oh, God.
This isn't going to be good.
No, it was there were so many memes going around of people's reactions. I literally paused it because I was watching it in my office, and because I can't bear to be spoiled. And so I paused it and went and got my cup of coffee, took a deep breath, restarted it.
Yeah, it was a lot. That's Boba Fett's episode. I mean, it's entitled "The Tragedy," and it's really about the fact that little Grogu gets snatched at the end. But the two best parts of it are when Boba Fett beats the crap out of everyone with a gaffy stick, and then when he comes back with the armor on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he looks so good in that armor.
I don't know. Mino went a boulder trick, bowling over the troopers. It's very gifable.
Yeah, okay, you're right.
Before we get into the main chunk of the episode, because I know we just all want to talk about Boba Fett, but in the pre-title sequence, I love the continuation of the whole gag with when Grogu hears his name. He's just like, mm-hmm. And it makes you let down your guard too, because you're having these cute moments between Grogu and Din Djarin with the ball and the name and
even laughs.
Yeah, and it lowers your guard, and then you get hit with chapter 14, The Tragedy, and you're like, oh crap. So yeah,
Such a gut punch.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of figured that this would be the point where the crap would hit the fan. How could this not go wrong? You're going to sit your little force-sensitive being in this Jedi temple that's just like a giant antenna, and just project out into the
He reached 5G. I mean,
and you're just like,
that's like 10G, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of technology is that? I really need that technology. But yeah, it was that episode had. I can't really say that it's my favorite because my favorite is chapter 16, right? But so many things happen in this episode that are very interesting to see. I mean, the whole Boba Fett situation and the way that they present you the Death Troopers, the Dark Troopers or Death Troopers, I don't know. And
Dark Troopers. Yeah.
The Dark Troopers, yes, the Dark Troopers. And we get to see the emotions of the jarring that he has for this little kid. I mean, Rodolfo Fofo, he says that I stole his joke from my episode of the podcast. Sorry, but yeah, we get to see the Jaren's emotions. First, we get to see him laugh. I think this is the first time ever that we see him laugh in the whole Mandalorian. I mean, he's the only one that for whom he projects these feelings, you know, and also when they take him away, he's like paralyzed for us first. I mean, we don't get to see his face. We don't know if he's crying or not, but we can really tell that he's worried and he's preoccupied because of body language, and I think that's great.
Yeah, it ends up just being when he picks up the ball on the the ball for his stick, Grogu's ball. It's so
right in his little pocket.
Yeah, that moment is really, really well done.
Yes,
the way that it ties back into your memory of the opening sort of frame of so.
And also, so many times he tried to rescue him, and he gets pushed out by the Force.
Right.
I think also one of the things, I think I mentioned it in my podcast, but I think it's interesting also to see non-Force sensitive characters get to feel a little bit of the Force. You know, I mean, he didn't experience it in his body like the way a Jedi would do, but he was thrown by the Force.
I didn't even think about that, but I think that actually ties really well into the final episode, because one thing that I like that The Mandalorian has done, I think, throughout its run is portray the Force as so much more powerful than our main hero. Like, our main hero and all of his shiny doodads are no match for the Force.
Yes.
And I think that power mismatch is one of the things I appreciate the most about it, about The Mandalorian. And, I didn't even think about that, but I think that really sets up what we see in the final episode.
And it's not just the power mismatch, but also how people react to Jedi powers and the Jedi themselves. We're not talking about the last episode yet, but I do love all those reaction shots, especially from Moff Gideon, where he's terrified in that moment. And it's nice, after being so accustomed to seeing things from within the Jedi world in a lot of the stories, to get that outsider perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I like the most about this episode, some folks in the chat were talking about how much they like just sort of the action direction, and they're excited to go ahead and see Roberto Rodriguez direct more episodes, and in the Book of Fett. So I really found the pace of the action to be delightful. I love action schlock movies, but I get bored by it easily when there's not enough like heart and stakes and humor to it. And I just thought you brought up the point with the gaffy stick. I was like, oh my God, it's so cool. And then you have the boulder, and you have everything with, they brought in so many different perspectives, and they did it in a way where it was visually interesting to watch, but still easy to follow. And this is like my big complaint with like Marvel movies, is I think a lot of times their action scenes are just like, it's a visual orgy to the extent that you can't really follow it. I mean, I'm not like knocking those movies, but I'm
Go ahead.
They're not my favorite. Okay, I'm not. That's not my. They don't.
Yeah.
I'm not
connect with me.
alone.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, actually, without the drama.
Yeah, and right, but that's one of the things that I thought was so well done about Rodriguez's direction in this episode, and just the entire action sequence it was really engaging, and fun to watch, and the pacing was perfect.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to see what he does with Book of Fett. And this episode felt like, more than anything else, a setup for that, now that I'm looking at it in retrospect. And God, I'm so stoked.
Oh yeah.
And can I just say that this episode really caught me off guard because like, no secret that last season especially, I complained about the length of certain episodes, that I felt they were too short. Some episodes even felt like vignettes rather than actual full episodes to me. And I looked at the running time of this episode before I watched, and I was like, oh, dang it. But it proved me wrong, because something I think they've done really well this season is that they've made each episode supremely satisfying, regardless of what the length is. And this episode was the shortest, but it was so good. And you know, I don't know if it was because it was so action-packed in the way they fit that in or what, but it was just, again, so fulfilling. When the episode was over, I was like, I cannot believe, you know, that wasn't longer, because it was great.
Right.
So much happened. Much happened. Like, I would struggle to give a 30-second summary. It was great.
Yeah, that whole action sequence with Fett and the gaffy stick is maybe 90 seconds long. So you don't have time to get very bored of it. And it doesn't hurt that you've got a master behind the camera who knows how to shoot action. And it felt so kinetic, and just how brutal it was. You could see it in the way that stormtroopers were hitting the ground and the way their armor was shattering. And Temuera Morrison really put his physicality into it as well.
And I think both you and me are the same on this, Stephen. Like, for me, like, I never, you know, even though I actually do really enjoy, like, seeing his character as a young boy in, like, Clone Wars and all that stuff. But as far as, like, the original trilogy goes, I never got the super fascination with Boba Fett. I get it now.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
incredible. And just the way Temuera Morrison did the action scenes and the way he plays the parts and everything, like, I am so psyched for the Book of Boba Fett, and I never thought I'd say that. Like, I just can't wait for it.
Yeah, the way they just turned that whole encounter around in like 2 or 3 minutes. You know, when Boba Fett and Fennec initially encounter Din, and you think that it's just going to be this big confrontation, and then all of a sudden it kind of turns around, and you're like, he's showing, you know, how, you know, his heritage, and you get the back, you know, how did Fennec Shand show up in this episode? We left her dead on Tatooine, you know, just that little tiny bit of exposition. It was just enough to just tie everything in completely. So it's showing you don't have to give, like, you know, so much exposition to tell so much. You know, I just really enjoyed the neatness of it. You know, how clean and neat that whole sequence was.
The symbolism of what he showed that he repaired. He gave her intestinal fortitude.
And I think it's something that the Star Wars universe has so much world building that's gone into it. There's so much, like, I think mythology is the right word. And that makes it easier to deliver these action sequences in a way that's connected to something logical. Now, obviously, there are Star Wars in recent memory that have failed to do that. We don't need to go into it, but y'all know what I'm talking about. And I think that's something that this series it gives me so much faith in the storytellers to deliver something that's fun and fulfilling, and that want to watch multiple times. And then when my kid asked to watch the episode, like my kid constantly wants to watch two things: the Lego Star Wars holiday special and the finale of this season. He constantly wants to watch them, and it's awesome to be able to watch something that can communicate successfully to a almost 4-year-old, and everyone that's here on this stream. It's really.
Can I just say, side note, if anybody hasn't watched the Lego holiday special, watch it now. It's great. It really is.
They're super fun. All the Lego Droid Tales. If you haven't seen Lego Droid Tales, they're hilarious. And I've seen them 20 times at this point because my son loves them. And they're still funny. They're still funny.
Yeah, I'm a mom
raising
too.
your kids right, Mary. You're raising those kids right.
I am a mom too, and I gotta say that we are a Star Wars family, and especially my stepson, who is 13. He's a huge fan, and he's been trying to introduce my son to Star Wars universe, but we never really get a wow reaction from him until he saw The Mandalorian. And The Mandalorian is the only show that really got him into Star Wars. So I'm really happy.
So what you're saying is The Mandalorian is a gateway drug.
It's wonderful. Yeah, and it's also Lego Star Wars is a Droid Tales is a gateway drug too.
Well, it's Star Wars for the next generation. You know, it's bringing in so many new people who had kind of either fallen off or weren't really excited about the recent things, but and two, that it's just very easily accessible to younger viewers who may not have gotten into, like Mary said, the deep lore and everything, that might not have struck a chord with them, but these are easily digestible. You don't have to know everything about the Star Wars universe to appreciate and to understand what's going on and just love the story for the story's sake.
This reminds me, because you mentioned I have a 13-year-old nephew, and everybody struggles to give him gifts, but for some reason I have the beat on what my 13-year-old nephew wants for Christmas, and I got him a combat grade lightsaber from. This is not a paid advertisement. Ultrasabers.com, which is based in Friendswood, Texas, and they do a wonderful job, and they have these great LED lightsabers. It's like the same thing as having a wooden sword, except it lights up. And I got him that for Christmas, and apparently he has been carrying it around with him everywhere for the past few days.
I'll check it out. But my stepson, same age as I mentioned, he started studying martial arts and everything, and he's always practicing with like sword fighting and bow. I don't know how the spear, like spear.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so I would really love to give him something like that. But yeah, one thing that I found particularly cool about Star Wars is that each generation has its own set of movies, right? Because, for example, for my stepson, his movies are the prequels. Those are the ones that are deep in his heart, right? And for older generations such as us, it's just the original trilogy, and some people will find the new trilogy to be their Star Wars, to be the ones that connected with them, And I think that's super cool about Star Wars, that it's universal. Each generation keeps adding something new on it and keeps connecting with some details that other generations may not.
And I think it's all perfectly valid too. Like, I've never been one to gatekeep anybody from in a fandom, I think you can be a real Star Wars fan if you've seen literally Star Wars and nothing else. If you've seen just The Mandalorian, you can take what you want from it, because it all has a similar feel and idea and identity. You can tell it's from the same family. So as long as everybody recognizes that The Empire Strikes Back is the best movie, like that's like my one gatekeeping.
You gotta ruin the moment, Steve. You just gotta go there.
Leave it to me. You ought to know me by now, Mary.
Yeah, but it goes beyond the movies too, because there was a stretch of years where Star Wars was what they were doing with Clone Wars in animation. There are fans who grew up with that being Star Wars for them. Yeah. So, and that's what is now happening as well with the Mandalorian.
Among those, yes.
So yeah, it's spreading out to all these different areas, these different corners of Star Wars.
And I think that actually comes back to one of the things that the central parts of this episode that I found so cool, which was when you put Grogu on the stone, right? And he's connecting to the Force. He could be talking to literally anyone in the Star Wars universe. And so I think it was so interesting, and this is one of the reasons I thought it was so good that they kept releasing this serially, right? So that we have time to talk about it. All the discussion about who is it going to be that Grogu's talking to?
Who's going to show up? I watched a lot of videos. I saw a lot of fan discussion. Who's going to show up? It was like, who's alive in the universe at this time that could possibly show up, And then there's I saw some vids about, well, this person could technically still be alive, and so could this person, and it was a lot. And then
I was so wrong, Nessie. I did not think it was going to be, I didn't think it was going to be who it was.
Me, I was worst case scenario, because I'm thinking, okay, just because you're sending it out, sending out a message via the Force doesn't mean a Jedi is going to show up.
Yeah, I mentioned that. I mean,
I was thinking, oh crap!
I was worried. I was honestly worried who was going to be the responder. I mean, because it could be a Jedi, as it could be a Sith, some long lost Sith, or someone with a very strong connection to the dark side, and I was worried. I was really worried, but but in the end, I thought that maybe he would somehow Ahsoka would be the one that feels that Grogu is indeed ready to train, and maybe she would go back for him or something. So I was hoping, but when I saw the I'll just stop there until we get to the final episode.
I thought it was going to be Ezra. I really thought it was going to be Ezra, because I thought they had been building up to that when Ahsoka said that, I've got to find Thrawn, and my heartthrob. So I really thought that was going to be, and as it turns out, there's going to be a spin-off Ahsoka series, and probably that will involve that plot line.
When I saw the green laser, I also thought it was going to be. Well, at first I felt, oh, it's Ahsoka, of course, and then I saw the green lightsaber.
Yeah,
and I was like, is it Ezra? Because I don't think
can we wait until we plunge full on it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stop.
Yeah, I kind of I can't wait for this, but we've been going for an hour, so I'm going to do the mid-roll real quick. All right. So, the mid-roll is the part of the stream where I go, oh yeah, will you please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done that already? Because I never remember to do that otherwise. Also, I want to say thank you to our wonderful patrons who help keep the lights on and keep the streaming software paid for. Our patrons our High Council of Patrons is Lord John Bronsteen the Wise, Sir Maura Lee of Starfall, Sixto Sounds, aka JP the Axe Grinder, Ridiculous Ed Tollett, the Alpha Patron. We love you guys. Thank you so much. And they are supported also by the Lords and Ladies of the Realm, Lady Leaf Underhill, and Aemy Blackfyre, lover of poles. So many thanks to all of our patrons. I will also talk about next week. I will be out of town. My older brother is getting married on next Saturday, so I won't be home. I might be home in time for a stream, but I can't guarantee it, and I've got a busy week ahead of me, so I don't even know what to prepare for. So come back next week and see whatever John and Nessie are doing. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I might pop in if I have the time, and John better be nice to me this time.
And I'll be prepared this time.
So yeah, and then, we've got other stuff coming up in January, but things that I'm looking forward to covering in the not too distant future: WandaVision, any of these new Star Wars shows as they come out. We'll probably be talking about them. Basically, 2021 looks like Here Be Dragons is going to become a Disney Plus shill channel.
Yeah, big fandom shills, y'all.
Yeah.
Big fandom shills.
So we'll see. So John, what's coming up in the not?
I mean, can we actually move on to Disney Plus? Because that would really help our numbers go up.
It really would.
Yeah.
I mean, give us an episode, man.
So next Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're moving back to our regular time on John Webster Film. Aemy and I will be discussing Wonder Woman 1984, which should go completely smooth because there hasn't been any
no
discourse on that at all. And then the week after that, we're going to be returning. All the Knights of Kira will be returning. Jared will join us for a discussion on the film A Dangerous Method. So join us for that.
Right on. Nessie, Unspun Yarn's got stuff coming up soon too, don't you?
Yeah, we've got a busy month ahead. On the 30th of this month, I'm going to count that toward January because, January, it's just a huge month for everybody. My co-host Aemy and I are going to have special guests, Lo the Lynx and ITM, Ian Thomas Malone from Estradio Podcast, on to Bleep the Patriarchy, and we're going to be discussing transphobia and turfism. Tune in for that. It's going to be an excellent episode. I'm just saying here. January 14th, my good friend and co-host from Here Be Dragons, John Webster Film, is going to be coming on my channel, and we're going to be discussing Merlin and the archetype of the magician. And the 27th of January, Erin M., good friend of the channel. You've seen her on all of our things. She's going to be coming back on my channel, and we're going to be discussing Morgan Le Fay. So it's going to be a magical month.
I'm sorry, but that's the absolute perfect follow-up.
Of course. Really is. I have to balance the two of you out,
Fantastic. Mary, you got stuff in the works?
Yeah, so Clint and I took a little bit of a break because the holidays demand free time be spent with family, and that's a good thing. But we are working on our trial episode, which will center on the question of whether or not Rhaegar Targaryen should be sent to horny jail. It's going to be fun. Let me tell you, most of the script for this episode has been written while we were unsober. It's hilarious. We have found people from around the fandom and from within our Slack group, the West Jersey Bar Association, to participate and serve as witnesses. And I think it's going to be a blast. I am behind on working on it, but hopefully we'll have some time. So hopefully that will come out at the beginning of January. And that's the next thing that Learned Hands has on the agenda. And we're excited for that. And then we'll move back to regularly scheduled content.
Right on. And Cecilia, what's in the near future for you?
Okay, well, I just renewed my podcast. I was on a long I don't know, recess or something. But yeah, I'm back, and the episode from last Thursday was about the Mandalorian. Also, Rodolfo, who is among the comments right there, was one of my guests, and we had a lot of fun. They literally spent like around 15 minutes just messing around with me having a crush with Pedro Pascal.
I mean, a crush I share. I mean,
Yeah. He's really, really handsome. But
and I
It's with you people and your crushes. I know nothing about that.
and the next episode is going to be about Love Actually, the movie, this
Speaking of
lovely holiday movie. And I'm going to have a really good guest, a girl. And probably the next episode is going to be about Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
Very familiar guest right there. And I'm really excited to be back. And I probably will be moving into the live format because it's easier for moms for busy working from home moms. So yeah, I'm very excited to be back. Yeah.
Yeah. Look forward to that.
Thanks.
I think that's it for the mid-roll. I can't think of anything else. So, shall we talk about the Mandalorian?
Yes.
Oh, if we must.
So one of the it's really going to be difficult for me to articulate in this back half of our live stream just how impactful this 3-episode arc is. When there's this moment when Boba Fett first shows up in his armor, and and you see that chipped, dented, painted over the black that he was wearing, and I'm like, that's Boba Fett. I know like the jumpsuit color is all wrong or whatever. That's Boba Fett right there. And then he just proceeds to, take stormtroopers to school more or less by himself. And like, I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan. I don't remember not knowing what Star Wars is. I mean, I am a little bit older than the first film, but not by much. I think it was in kindergarten when I saw Empire Strikes Back in the theater. So I don't really remember not knowing about Star Wars. And seeing Boba Fett sort of like on screen, living up to the reputation of what he was supposed to be back in the films, it was one of those giddy moments for me. I was 10 years old again in that moment. And like, I was jumping up and down on my couch going, knee guns,
See, for me, it's that moment when, his jetpack, fires off, the missile and the two ships, come down. And then it's that turn towards the camera with that music cue. It's like, this guy is a badass.
It's funny because we're talking about like different perspectives. I think the thing that gets me for it is that Tamora Morrison is back. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's because I love the prequels, and I mean, I love the originals too, right? But to see Tamora playing Boba, that's the shit right there. Like that's the synergy of the originals and the prequels that just really hit home for me. And and then that he has the freaking gaffy stick. It's so delightful. And to see the merging of those two sort of sets of stories, they come together for me, they come together in Boba in that moment. And we have that in we already talked about, there's the joke. We already talked about The Believer, but in that there's the joke where it's like, well, I think they might recognize my face. Seeing him, it's just like this delivering on the promise of like connecting the tissue between some of these stories and like tying up their loose ends. It was so awesome.
What I found remarkable was that because, sort of my headcanon for the voice of the clones and I guess Django and adult Boba Fett has become D. Bradley Baker from Clone Wars, who voiced Rex and all the clones, and it was amazing how how closely linked those become. So I watched Tamora Morrison playing Boba Fett and then talking about how his is the voice of the clones that Bo-Katan has heard
Yes.
thousands of times. And for me, there wasn't even any separation, even though those are two different performers. It felt like he was carrying on this legacy of all these clones, that I had watched for years on that series. And so I just love, because it all feels so beautifully connected, and I'm so on board with his performance, even more so than when he originated Django and Attack of the Clones, which he was great in, but I just feel like he's brought it to a whole nother level in this series. And again, like, I'm just so giddy waiting for the Boba Fett show, even though we have like a whole year, but still super psyched.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
so-
he's representing not only himself, but like his million brothers.
Mhm.
He had a million siblings.
Yeah.
And they all, that they all had the same voice. They may look different slightly, had their own little distinctions, but just that voice, that's what, as Bo-Katan says, I've heard that voice over and over again. So yeah, I don't even need to hear anything who you are. I don't care who you are. I know the voice.
Mhm.
But then for him to, pull up his cred, so to speak, and say, yeah, hey, I'm a Mandalorian too.
Which, by the way, Mary, we're both in agreement that, like, we have our fingers crossed for him playing Rex in the Ahsoka show too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's gonna happen for sure. If they're doing the Ahsoka show, I don't see how they can.
I don't see how they can.
Let me tell you why. Because
disagree.
Rex would be like, because of what they age at twice the rate.
Yeah.
Oh,
Rex would be really, really old.
but it could just be in a flashback. Like, I think it could be.
Oh, there.
Yeah, I think it's very possible. Like, I think that if they do the Ahsoka show and it's in the current timeline, they were 100% going to have flashbacks to fill in some of the detail. I mean,
Yeah.
right? Wouldn't you want?
But see, I was also fine with. I had convinced myself that all we were getting at Bo-Katan was going to be a flashback too, but they proved me wrong there. So I'm like, no, just give me Rex as part of the show.
Well, they also may have figured out a way to, like, maybe at the end of Rebels, right? They figure out a way to stop the rapid aging. Who knows? So I don't know. Like, if they want him there, he'll be there. Like, I don't know if it will be a flashback or all the way, but I find it hard to believe that Tamora Morrison is involved in Star Wars. There is an Ahsoka show, and the Ahsoka show will not in some way have Rex.
Yeah.
I mean, but look, if they can CGI DH someone, they can CGI wrap.
If they can put somebody's face on a whole different actor.
I think he's fine if just put on like the beard that he has in Rebels and stuff. I think he'll look the appropriate age. So like they can do it, and so.
In some way, I think they're going to find a way to tie it in. I'm with you that there's some story problems with it, like, but if they want to do it and it's important enough to the story, they will.
Agreed. Okay, guys, I can't sit on it anymore.
Now, wait. There's a whole lot of stuff that happens in that final episode.
Okay, that's fine, but we skip around Luke freaking Skywalker.
Luke.
I mean,
Okay,
over an hour. Luke,
How excited were you when that X-Wing fighter showed up?
man, okay, so I had like a million thoughts in about 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Cecilia's got it. Like, because I'm like, oh, maybe they're going to bring Dave Filoni and back because it's an X. Wait a minute, just one X-Wing. You know who has an X-Wing? Oh.
It's so funny you say that because I did not think it was Luke at all. I really didn't think it was Luke. I hadn't been spoiled. And when it was just one X-Wing, and then Cara Dune makes that joke. She's like, one X-Wing? How helpful is that going to be? At that moment, I went from 0% Luke Skywalker to 99% Skywalker. And it took like a fraction of a second. My, Star Wars brain, there was no critical thinking. It was just like,
Right.
my heart felt was right in the moment.
Yeah,
for a brief moment, for a brief moment, I somehow thought that maybe those were the ones that helped Mando in the giant spider episode. So I was like, okay, maybe they'll show there will be some more X-Wings later, and then I start watching the face of Moff Gideon, and then Grogu like pointing off his ears up, and I was like, no,
what?
That's someone force sensitive.
Yeah,
that's someone strong with the Force, and I was like, Ahsoka doesn't have an X-Wing, but maybe it has to be Ahsoka. I mean, it can be Luke. It can be Luke because those were like rumbling in my head. I was like just increasingly anxious, and then
the doors open, man.
And then I saw on the screens like the lightsabers, and I was like, okay, maybe it's Ahsoka, but Ahsoka doesn't have an X-Wing, and I was like, oh my god! And then I saw the green lightsaber, and I was like, oh my god, is that Ezra? Is that Luke? I don't think it's Luke. It's impossible.
The glove, man. The glove gave it away.
I saw the freaking glove, and I was like, no way, no way. And then bam! Oh my god, no.
I kept going, there's no way they're going to bring Luke. So I'm looking the whole time. Show me a way that it's not Luke. Green lightsaber. Okay. Black glove. Okay, one black glove. And then I'm like, that's his belt from Return of the Jedi.
That's his belt.
Seriously.
He's got all the accessories.
So, like, I kept looking for ways to prove to myself that it wasn't Luke, and I kept not being able to.
I mean, it was such an exciting moment. You just showed, like, so when this came out, I watched it with my kids because they were home from school due to COVID-related drama. And so we all watched it at like 7:00 in the morning while eating donuts. And then, we watched it again when my husband came home. And like halfway through the episode, like it, not before the X-Wing, okay? Before there's even a hint that someone's going to come help them, Marshall looks at me and it's like, when is Luke Skywalker coming? And it was pretty great. It was just great. It's like, where's Luke Skywalker? And I was like, I don't know why he's talking about that. So.
Yeah, y'all, Cecilia's having a little bit of audio issues on her end, so she'll be back hopefully very shortly. But yeah, you told me that when we were talking earlier in the week, Mary, and I'm just like, I hate it for your husband, but that's so cute that Marshall is just like in love with Luke too.
It was so funny because it's just such a cool moment, right? And like for Marshall's most vivid memory of Star Wars is the Star Wars Lego Droid Tales. But it's the green lightsaber that's the giveaway, right? Like for him. So yeah, and he calls it the save, when are they gonna save Baby Yoda? That's when he asked to watch the episode. Like, I want to watch the episode where Luke saves Baby Yoda. That's what he calls it. So
as excited as I was to see Luke, I'm telling you, I just went ballistic when I saw R2. R2 is my favorite. And that little moment that he has with Grogu, and he's just like, you can tell he's so excited. And I'm like, why is he so excited? Has he seen this kid before? Does he know who this kid is? Of course he knows who this kid is. R2 knows everything. He can't say it, but he knows everything.
So it's pretty clear that Grogu was probably at the Jedi Temple when he was very, very, very young.
When Anakin was there as a young man, they were the same age. They're the same age.
And R2 has been to the Jedi Temple many times.
Mm-hmm.
So it's entirely possible that he does know Grogu.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't even think about that until this moment. But they have met each other.
They have met each other. And somehow that little kid got out of the Jedi Temple.
That might literally be why he's willing that Grogu kind of like, because it's when R2 rolls in that
It
he
is.
turns away from Din and
Mhm.
goes to talk to, because I think they recognize each other.
He
Man.
trusted R2. He was kind of leery on Luke, but he knows and he trusted R2.
Y'all, ageless robots. What an amazing storytelling device.
I mean, Grogu's so little. I mean, he could have like fit inside a little R2 compartment, and gotten out.
Why not? Yeah,
I mean,
no,
R2 was there the night that the younglings were slaughtered. He was there.
yeah, it's possible that R2 is the one who saved Grogu.
Yeah. Or help get him out. Help get him out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see that little adventure. I want to see that in a droid's tank. That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tony is asking literally, I think probably posted this in the delay from when I said I think it was. So we don't know who saved Grogu for sure. There is no canon on that, but like I think R2 is as good a guess as any.
Yeah, I'm going with R2. He was part of it, even if he wasn't the actual person who got him off planet. He was part of that rescue.
That would make Marshall very happy because, like, Marshall loves R2. Kids love the droids.
I love R2. He's a little guy.
Yeah, but it's just it really is delightful to me how much so Marshall loves R2 and BB-8, and it's just delightful to me how much kids connect with these little beep beep blooping droids from Star Wars. So I think that would be so fun. That would be really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The two cutest beings in the entire Star Wars galaxy on screen at the same time with R2-D2 and Grogu.
Oh my goodness. Y'all can probably hear my dogs barking in the background.
Yeah, it's not too bad though.
No worries.
I mean, I've got LD barking in the background, so.
We were doing an episode and we started talking about some episode we started talking about the dire wolves, and then on cue my dog started barking and I was like, really? How did you know?
But as much as I was giddy buzzing from the whole Luke thing and him coming down the hallway and getting his Darth Vader Rogue One type scene, which was just, I loved it. But the heaviest, most impactful emotional moment is literally just Pedro Pascal taking off his hat.
Oh my goodness! Yes.
Oh God! Yes.
Oh
I cried.
I cried like crazy. I mean, can you hear me right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about earlier. I had a little problem with my headset, so I had to switch to another one. Well, oh my goodness, I had a really intense day that Friday. So there were so many emotions involved. Not only just the episode, but many of the things that I had lived that day. So when I saw Pedro taking off his helmet with that face, about to burst into tears, I was bummed. I was just crushed, and I cried. I cried like a maniac because, well, I'm literally 30 seconds earlier we saw just Luke Skywalker's revealing, and I was so euphoric that when I ended watching the episode, when I stopped watching the episode, I was trembling. I was trembling and in emotion because, well, there were so many things happening that day. Not just the Mandalorian, but that was my release. That was my stress release. And when I saw those eyes about to burst into tears, that father saying goodbye to the most precious thing in his life. I mean, not me as a mom. I can relate. I completely relate. And this is the first time ever that I have truly cried on Star Wars. I mean, I love Star Wars. I like it. I may not be an expert on Star Wars, but yeah, I love it. But this is the real first time that I actually cried, and boy did I cry.
Yeah. Well, before we got Luke, before we got that scene, you know, we got a pretty kick-ass scene when Din is rescuing baby Grogu.
Can we go back to the beginning of the
You know what,
episode?
John? Go all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah, I was trying,
Okay.
John.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's actually go back to the very end of the last episode, because we have a great scene where Din Djarin communicates
Oh yeah.
with Moff Gideon through hologram,
Mhm.
and you know, says back his speech from the end of season 1. You may think you have some idea what you're in possession of, but you do not.
You do not.
He means more to me than you will ever know. He will be back with me soon. Like, that is like the mic drop of all mic drops.
Yeah.
Like, that was, and the look on Moff Gideon's face, just as like, I can't tell if it's like a mixture between like having had enough of this guy, but also like some twisted amusement. Yeah, and it's just, man, it made you ready for that final episode. And
yeah, well, he thinks he's holding all the cards, you know.
Yeah.
Guy, Mary, I just saw your message. I know you've got to go soon, what with the kids and all. So, you know what? I'm just going to give you the floor. Final thoughts, Mary, on these last 3 episodes?
Yeah, I'm letting my Grogu talk for a second. But I really thought this episode was so well done. The thing that the big, I'm gonna just start with the one negative thing that I have to say. So the Mandalorian for me, like, it walks the line between being this fun adventure and sometimes being a little bit too like straightforward on the like duplicating the RPG style of storytelling. And for me, the first like 10 minutes of the episode ended up being kind of slow, where they were just explaining how they were going to like break into Moff Gideon's ship. And it was fine. It's not like I disliked it, but I felt like it kind of diminished the magic for me in the beginning. And it was, by the time we were into the heart of the episode, it didn't really matter. But that's just the kind of thing that I am like a little bit, that I get like worried about in this kind of show. I love it, but there's a point where sometimes it feels a little bit too formulaic for me, and I was worried at the beginning of this episode. Not by the end, but and when I rewatch it, I kind of still feel the same way about it.
It's so funny that Mary, you and I were basically on opposite ends, and at least on initial viewing.
Right. Yeah. No, we are, so it's fine. And then I think, that said, I love that opening scene with Bo-Katan. I think it's fun. I think it helps sort of set the stakes related to the Darksaber. Also, I have a Darksaber right here.
Of course you do.
Big surprise.
Why not? So I think it's, I think it's fun. But for me, this was just an episode that got better as it went along. Like, I was kind of underwhelmed and then just totally bought in by like the 20-minute mark. The soundtrack for the Death Troopers, when the Death Troopers are starting up, I absolutely loved that. I thought that was fucking sweet.
The soundtrack in all the episode was amazing.
Yeah, it was so good.
Well, it just ramped the tension up.
Yeah, I was on the fence about actually buying the soundtrack until this final episode, and then as soon as it was over, I was like, no, oh well, just another purchase.
It was so good.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead because.
Yeah, no. So I think really quickly, I guess the other thing is, I thought I really loved the contrast between Din's battle with the single Death Trooper, and then Luke just tearing shit up at the end. And that ends up being like one of my favorite parts of the episode, aside from just, I completely agree that the emotional moments at the end were were really great. I think just the tension in that battle between Din and that Death Trooper, it was great. And then you get the battle with Moff Gideon. It's almost anticlimactic, right? You know that Moff Gideon is sort of I don't mean it in a bad way. I can see John's reaction here. Like, it's exciting that he's battling for the Darksaber, but it almost feels like an afterthought. And I think that's intentional, good storytelling, because Din is not. He's not thinking about dueling for the Darksaber like it matters. It's
he didn't even know that. He didn't even know.
Right. It's all about Grogu, right? And it's this wonderful thing, like where you have the Beskar staff element that's brought in to allow that duel. It's awesome. But I just really liked that. Again, the match was even, right, as opposed to how it felt with the Dark Troopers. And so I thought that was, again, like, just really well done. It was an example of how the action made sense in terms of the story. It was not just like throwing in this extended long battle, because the battle between Moff Gideon and Din is really short. Like, it does not take up that much time on screen. But it comes across really great. It works for the story. So I love that. I'm sure y'all have a talk about what you think about the CGI. I just don't. It doesn't matter to me that much because I feel like the story bones are there. And again, by the end of this episode, I was just so satisfied by the bones of the story that I just didn't. And Luke felt so right to me that it just didn't matter. And I guess that's my impression, and this is probably my favorite part of the thing that just sold me on this episode, is that Luke comes in like this mythical hero, and he's presented that way. We see him the way that other people see him. It's not really a representation of Luke as Luke sees himself. It's a Luke as other people see Luke.
The legend.
The legend of Luke Skywalker. It's exactly the thing that Luke talks about derisively in The Last Jedi. He is the legend of Luke Skywalker. That's what we see. And not only is it satisfying to see that, I felt like the show presented it in a way that just made so much sense to me. Like that we saw Luke Skywalker at his power, but we saw him through someone else's eyes. We saw him through the eyes of the people he rescued. And so that is, to me, why that contrast makes such a big difference. Like Din not being able to battle one Death Trooper versus Luke just
and
wrecking house.
And think about it. He's the biggest badass in the whole galaxy. And he's nothing compared to what Luke has to offer.
Nothing.
That is an overwhelming thought. That is a really overwhelming
crime. Yeah.
So.
I just loved it.
The only thing we haven't really touched on from this episode that I think warrants some love from Mary before she's got to go is the assault team is 4 badass women who are taking care of business.
Real female power display there, right there. And I really loved it and appreciated it. It didn't feel forced upon us. So because we have seen this 4 women constantly in this series. So it really made sense, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. I mean, Cara Dune is amazing. She's a real fighter. In real life, she's a real fighter.
Dr. Banks is a real professional wrestler.
Banks is yes.
Yeah, I thought it was the thing I like about it is, again, it gives me a lot of optimism for the story going forward, because to me, like Cara Dune and Bo-Katan, they're really different kinds of characters. And I'm really interested to see I'm really interested to see how much else this story digs into. We've sort of dug a little bit into Cara Dune's backstory, but I want to see us dig a little bit more into Bo-Katan. And so that, again, that's just, I have this emotional investment in the stakes of all the women fighting this battle. It's not just that it's like some like badass lady ripping shit up. It's that I connect with the feelings that these people are having.
Mhm.
And I think it's the thing that's even more interesting than the fact that it's these three women, right? Is that there's also a story about recovering a child,
Yes.
right? And so, Din is obviously a man, but it's a story that's driven by a parental instinct, and not by revenge.
Yes.
And Bo might be driven a little by revenge, but it's more by reclaiming like her ancestral sword, right?
Yes. Yes. Well, Cara actually has a bond with Grogu.
And I just found that to be, that's so interesting, particularly in the context of the Western genre that we're riffing off of, is that we're seeing good guys who are not motivated by revenge for some kind of like wrong that's done on them. We saw that a little bit in The Believer, right? Because Mayfeld is not so much revenge, right, as harm prevention, right? But that is, to me, that's sort of like a classic Western storyline, Mayfeld storyline.
Yeah.
But then when we return to the rescue, it's less so that, right? And it's not rescuing a helpless woman, it's a child. And so I thought that's just, again, it's the context of the story that makes it meaningful to me. And so I'm not just like so excited to see women like blowing shit up.
Yeah, but specifically these women.
Yeah, no, but I think it's just, I hate to like over essentialize it to like, oh, I'm so excited because it's just like badass ladies doing shit. Yeah, that's cool. But I think that it's just the overall context of this story is part of what excites me, because it's women that are incorporated into this arc in a very interesting kind of way. And so that's what makes me optimistic for the story, is I think there's a lot of depth to explore. But beyond just sort of like a flat like action narrative. So
see, Mary, this is why I keep asking you to come back.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, I'm gonna bow out. But yeah, thanks for having me. I hope y'all enjoy living on this episode. So yeah, this was a blast. I was so happy to come and talk about it. And I'll send Marshall and Fox my love.
Yes, please do. I love those guys.
All right.
All right. Bye, Mary.
Bye, Mary.
Bye.
Ugh, finally.
Oh, finally.
We're not in the Zoom, Stephen.
Oh,
You might want to
We're
click
live on
people
YouTube,
out.
not on Zoom. Most of you are going to get that joke, though. Most.
For those who don't, we're not actually happy to see her go. That's
No,
an
I love
in-joke.
Mary to death.
but yeah, those the squad. Big squad vibes, but they're all from different backgrounds, and they're coming in with different, their own stories, but they all come together to rescue this child. It's just wonderful how that they were able to just bring these desperate type characters together for this one particular goal.
Yeah. Going back to the soundtrack situation, I would like to emphasize two things. The opening of the Mandalorian, the Mandalorian's theme, we always see the same motive, right? In the same tone, in the same way, except in this episode, where it's a little bit more intense. It's it reflects the stress of the moment, and I was mentioning in my podcast that I kind of feel this whole soundtrack of The Mandalorian as a whole. It does have a connection with John Williams' work, but it also gives me the Morricone feels. You know, I kind of feel like it's a marriage between Ennio Morricone and John Williams' work because of the Western vibes, the Western kind of vibe. And I loved it, and I loved everything about it. And this episode in particular, from the beginning, I mean, from the very first, we see the title, and we hear that da-dun with such an intensity that you know that it's going to be a stressful episode. You know, you're going to be on the edge of your seat. And then, of course, when the dark troopers are turned on, that whole Skrillex vibe that kind of come with the like the mechanic like the mechanic movements of the things that were, I don't know, turning them on. I love that so much. It added so much tension to the scene. And of course the scene where Luke shows up, that whole little voice, the whole little I think it was like one or two voices on the background like that keep going like da da da, da. I see, like very subtle. That was subtle, but yet it gave it so much build up to the scene, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I'm a huge fan of soundtracks and soundtrack talk. So yeah.
Have you met John?
Nothing like that goes on here.
No. I don't think John will ever make a whole 3-hour long episode about I don't know. Was it?
Yes, he would.
I don't know. Maybe about, I don't know, Lord of the Rings. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
I haven't heard of that.
I'm just guessing. I'm just guessing. But yeah, that was one of the things that I appreciated the most about this episode, apart from the emotion, the surprise, and that whole thing.
There's some great like a mixture of electronics and chorus right before Luke comes out of the elevator. And unleashes on that final set of the Dart Troopers. That, like, for some reason I really loved that moment because it felt like you're just waiting for what we've been talking about, this myth,
the legend,
unleash.
And it really gave you the vibe. I mean, something mysterious and wonderful was about to come out from that door.
Yeah.
And you could hear it in that subtle little voice, right? in behind. And I mean, that added so much to the scene, so that when we actually saw Luke's face, it was like, I don't know if you guys were able to listen everything that I said before I left for a moment, but oh my god, I was so excited, so excited that I don't know, this scene. I mean, I've seen a lot of content in my life in 35 years. I mean, I watched a lot of TV, a lot of movies. I've consumed a lot of content. But this scene in particular was the one that actually made me realize what would be like to be there. What would like to be what would be experience those feelings right there in the first in as an actor or as a producer or as a filmmaker. Really it really moved something from me and made me wonder a lot of things that I'm doing in my life, right? I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating, and maybe I don't know, thinking about many things in my life, but that scene was super meaningful. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm with you. Like, it really is masterful the way they did it, because I was convinced it wasn't Luke, more from like there's just no way they're going to do Luke Skywalker.
Yes, exactly.
But like, I couldn't prove to myself that it wasn't, and it became pretty apparent that, oh, that is Luke. And so I'm like, Sebastian Stan? Is it going to be Sebastian Stan? And
right.
But like, and I'm somebody who has jokingly called this show the Baby Yoda show, a few times. You know, like
Oh, you got to call yourself out, Stephen.
yeah, and I even made the joke at the end of when the series is over. I'm like, how are you going to have Baby Yoda show with no Baby Yoda? But and yes, his name is Grogu. I know, but like when Luke leaves with him, I was like, that is how you do it. If you're going to remove Grogu from the story in a satisfying way, this is exactly how you do it. You send him off with the biggest badass that ever was in that galaxy.
Well, the whole theme was to get him somewhere safe.
Mm-hmm.
So that he is safe from these forces that are trying to take him and use him for whatever purposes, you know, they had. They got his blood. They're going to do something with it. And who better to protect him? Who in this entire galaxy? Because
and who more, and just given that it's like, given where it's set in the timeline, you know, just a few years after Return of the Jedi, who else kind of could it be? Who else should it be?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know there's a character called Cam that I don't really know that it could have been. Could have been Ezra. I do know Ezra, but like logically, who should it be other than Luke Skywalker? It should be Luke. If a Jedi is answering the call, it should be him.
I mean, you didn't think it was going to be Mace? Come on.
Mace Windu with
I saw that meme and I was like, yeah.
So can I talk about this episode?
Okay, please.
To get
Unleash, John.
my sort of feelings out, because I'm not. I want to say that I'm almost certainly not as glowing about certain things as other people are. Although it's far different from my initial viewing, which I was actually a bit disappointed in certain things. But so I want to say first and foremost that I do love this episode. But I do want to. I want to touch on some things throughout the whole episode. Because I feel like I do have to work up to those final moments. I really do actually love the stuff in the beginning. I love the establishing of the sort of relationships between these different factions of characters that we've seen throughout the season. And I love everything with Bo-Katan where, you know, she's sizing up Boba Fett, and it's stuff that calls back to Clone Wars and all that stuff where she says, I've heard your voice thousands of times. And just, I love that, you know, in this episode, we also get confirmation that Dr. Pershing is a clone specialist and that's what he's involved in. So I like that. And the whole like storming the ship sequence where, you know, they're going in and they crash land. I love all that. I love the action with, you know, you've got Bo-Katan and the other member of her team. I can't remember the actress's name. But you've also got Fennec and Cara Dune all working together. I love when, you know, they're on the bridge and then the Mandalorians come up on the sides and unleash their weapons and stuff. It's just great. And then you get to that moment on the bridge where Bo-Katan is like, where's Moff Gideon? And she gets really stressed. And what I like about this section is it really starts to set up the dynamics of what I think season 3 are going to be. And then it's going to draw on a lot of this material of the Mandalorian politics and, you know, all the history. And I think we're going to get a lot of stuff that we've been wondering about, like what happened to the Mandalorians during this period of time that we didn't see. And I hope there will be flashbacks involved because I'd really love to see that kind of stuff. And I actually love the fight between Moff Gideon and Din Djarin, because maybe it doesn't mean as much to Din because all he cares about is getting Grogu back. But I think we really feel the weight of that moment because we know the Darksaber is really important. And whether Din realizes it or not, when he defeats Moff Gideon, that's putting him in a very important position. And Bo-Katan knows this. Like, as soon as she sees him holding the dark saber, it's like, oh crap, this got a lot.
You got a problem.
Yeah.
I would like to point out, well, continue, and I would like to point out something later.
And so I like that. For me, that was like the big build up to this moment. It's like was the big conflict, and I was waiting to see how that was going to play out in the closing moments of the episode. And then I kind of skipped over the Dark Troopers, but like, man, when Din is having his fight with the Dark Trooper, when that thing is bashing against his helmet, it's like you feel the way that, and you're like, damn, that is some good armor. Yeah, and like the Dark Troopers were so amazingly well done. Like, they were terrifying.
Yeah.
I was talking with Aemy about this. Like, I was scared stiff of these things. And there's some really great thematic stuff going on with the Dark Troopers, where you hear Dr. Pershing talk about how eliminating the human inside things was removing the last flaw. Yeah. And that you can link right up to Din Djarin, where he's constantly wearing his armor, but at the end of the episode chooses to remove that helmet, and it shows his humanity. And so I like that parallel. Anyway, going back to where the Dark Troopers are flying back in, which is like, of course they were going to. It's like, how did we not see that coming? And that build up to this huge, enormous climax where they're busting down the door. And I was like, I had no idea how they were going to get through that. I'm like, crap, is this how the season is going to end? Is it just
freaking Skywalker? That's how.
But then the X-Wing comes flying in, and I did honestly, for a split second, think that it's our Rangers of the New Republic, because they played that trick on us by having those guys throughout the season. So that's our first initial thought. And it's right after Cara Dune says, one X-Wing, great, we're saved. And you see the X-Wing like pulling in. And right as Bo-Katan is like, Fire, identify yourself, my brain was working. I'm like, oh my God, are they going to do it? Are they actually going to do this? And then just bit by bit, you see the hooded figure, you see the lightsaber in the monitor.
Yeah.
And like, even though like we're going to get to the part where I wasn't as completely blown away on my first viewing, but this section chills. I was like, oh my God, it's freaking Luke Skywalker. And just the way they show each reveal, the green lightsaber, the glove, and the way he's just tearing through all those Dark Troopers, I was just like,
in a very Anakin Skywalker way.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah. And the way the characters were reacting to it, the way Grogu is looking at the screens, and Moff Gideon is just terrified. And just the way all the characters are acting about this. And and the way the music builds with what I was talking about before with the chorus and the electronics. And then you get to that final hallway sequence, and it's just so amazing. And the way, he just crushes that last one.
That force choke, that Darth Vader, Anakin force choke. Yeah.
Which makes you wonder how we should be feeling about it. The fact that it so closely resembles Vader.
Force choke is a dark side power. That was not force choke. That he was crushing a non-living thing.
Fair enough.
Because let's keep that clear. They are not living. They are droids.
Yeah.
Bad droids.
The human element was the final flaw they had to remove.
But you see the resemblance. I mean, it's little details that connect him to his father and his father's way. I mean, the whole scene is, I'm pretty sure you already mentioned it when I was away, but that scene is pretty much the same scene as Darth Vader's scene in Rogue One.
Yeah, the Rogue One callback.
And you see that parallel, and it's beautiful.
But it's the difference is he's facing off against
Non-living
droids
things. Yes.
inside armor, the green lightsaber as opposed to the red lightsaber. It's showing the differences. Yeah, it rhymes.
Right.
It's not the same thing. It's
an echo. It's a family air. Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's that Skywalker swagger, man.
And here's the part where I had some difficulty with the episode initially. He takes off the hood. I have to say, like, during this whole sequence, I was actually expecting them to have cast a new actor in the part. I had sort of prepared myself for that. The way they kept him, with his hood on and stuff, I thought he's going to take the hood off. We're going to get the reveal of a new actor playing Luke Skywalker. They didn't go that route. They went the CGI phase, which I have to be perfectly honest, I did find distracting, more so on my first viewing than on subsequent viewings.
You're not the first person I've heard say that, and that's legitimate, like it is what it is.
Yeah, and it kind of pulled me out of the moment and made that whole final section at first feel to me like it was like all the focus was on this CGI version of Luke, and it kind of stole the show and took focus away from Din Djarin and Grogu, and that kind of gave me let me go on. That gave me an uneasy feeling through as the episode finished. So I came away from this episode with mixed feelings overall. That said, I revisited the episode. I think it was either later. It wasn't. No, because that was 3 a.m. So it was the next night. Because Aemy, my wonderful co-host, was watching the episode for the first time. I said, well, let's sync up. Let me join you to rewatch it. This time, whether it was watching it with somebody else or whatever it was, I got to that moment and I was able to put everything in the proper context. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, I felt more the emotional core of what was happening with Din Djarin and Grogu, and how Luke was at that point. He's basically, you said, Stephen, he's operating as a plot device rather than as a focal.
He's a cherry on top of the cake.
Yeah. So, and then I just wept with the goodbye between Grogu and Din Djarin, and felt the emotion of that. And now, like, the whole sequence works beautifully for me. It just took a little time for me to get there, but I think it's a beautiful episode, and the music throughout that whole final section makes it so emotional.
Completely.
And so it's and then of course, I'll let, now that I've talked for all, I'll let you guys say some more about that whole sequence, but there are words to have about the final post-credit sequence as well.
There are. And like, sort of related to that, one of the things from one of the earlier episodes, actually the beginning of The Believer, so halfway through the episode before that, The Tragedy, we get the first look at Boba Fett in his armor again with the black underneath, and he's all chipped up and beaten up armor. And then at the beginning of the next episode, we get a Boba Fett we've also never seen before with that brand new clean paint job. And I'm like, damn, Boba, you look good. And maybe I'm the only one that really responded to it that way, but I'm like,
oh no, yeah, I did too. Definitely.
That clean, brand new, fresh paint job. Like, ooh, a badass.
Yeah, I think we all did. Well, before we get to the final scene, I would like to say something. Mary mentioned that the whole scene when they're planning the assault felt a little bit out of the... felt a little boring compared to the rest of the episode. I think I disagree with that, because I think this scene shows very much about Bo-Katan's character. She automatically assumes the role of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole mission was to get Mando rescue his child, and he could have been easily the leader of this mission. any other of the girls except for Bo-Katan's psychic. I don't remember her name, but all
That's
pretty much any of them could have assumed the leadership role. I mean, Cara Dune is a leader herself, but you can see that Bo-Katan truly has this. I don't know how to say that. She feels entitled to leadership because of her context, right? So when we see, I mean, that resonates when we see her face when Din Djarin is holding the dark saber. Her whole claim, her whole entitlement fell apart because of this particular situation. She no longer has that claim to the throne, at least not that easy, not as easily as she thought it would be. So I like that detail, that tiny little detail.
I think there's some great contradictions
Mhm.
with her character throughout
Mhm.
this season. Because at first, when we first see her in episode 3, she talks about seating a new Mandalore on the seat of the throne, which means that maybe she's not necessarily assuming that it will be her. But as we see in this episode, she's like, Moff Gideon is mine.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
when she gets on the bridge, she's like, where's Gideon? She's intent on getting that
Yeah.
dark saber herself. And I also think the fact that she won't take it is just Din Djarin giving it to her, because she actually has done that in the past, because Sabine gave her the dark saber, and I feel like maybe she feels like that's why she wasn't able to succeed, because
Mhm.
she was cutting a corner, maybe.
Yeah.
But she's in that position of feeling threatened by that, because she can't just accept it. So unless she wants to challenge Din Djarin for the darksaber, she's going to have to accept that somebody else will take on that mantle. And so I like the fact that we see multiple sides of her, where she seems like she's willing to do whatever's best for Mandalore, and whatever that means, she might go along with. But then we also see moments of where, as you say, she feels entitled.
Mhm.
She feels like maybe she's worked towards that. So I think she's going to be so interesting next season.
Yes.
And the dynamic between her and Din Djarin especially.
Yeah, she kind of gave me Daenerys Targaryen kind of vibes.
Be careful. That's all I'm gonna say.
How to start
I
a fight in
don't.
5
I'm not
words.
necessarily saying that she's going to take the path of Daenerys Targaryen and the 8th season of Game of Thrones, but yeah, I mean, the way that she portrays herself as a leader, as a someone confident of herself. I mean, a commanding person, you know.
She's royalty.
She's
know?
royalty. I mean, she like Tyrion said once in Game of Thrones, she was like she owes something. You can really tell, and how it fell apart when she saw Din Djarin walking with the with the dark saber in his hand. But really, Mando didn't really have a chance. I mean, he didn't have any options. It was either him or Moff Gideon.
Which, by the way, can I also say, I love all of Din Djarin's reactions throughout all this.
Oh my
He
God.
really he doesn't care. He's like, well, now it's hers. And then when Moff Gideon is like, no, she can only get it by defeating you in combat, and he just kind of shrugs and goes, I yield. Like, as if it's going to be.
He doesn't understand the context. I mean, he doesn't understand the context. He doesn't understand the meaning of that dark saber. He doesn't understand anything because he comes from a very different context, even though they are both Mandalorians.
And it's interesting that now he's the one who's laid back about the rigid structure of the rules, and she's the one who won't bend. And you know, that's a direct switching of positions from episode 3.
It's a change of priorities, I believe.
Yeah.
Because sorry, I mean, first the first priority of Mando, of Din Djarin, before meeting Grogu was
The job.
was his job, was his clan, was his rules, following the code. And now his priorities have changed. His priority right now is Grogu, and he will do anything for Grogu, even if it means breaking his laws. So yeah, and Bo-Katan's priority is power. I mean, maybe we, like I said, we get to see the gray areas of each character.
And it's actually interesting because that shouldn't be a surprise as far as Bo-Katan is concerned. I mean, I think watching it, it'd be easy for me to sort of be disarmed because it's like, that's Katie Sackhoff. I'm watching Starbuck. But actually, if you follow the character of Bo-Katan through the Clone Wars and through Rebels, she's always been very ambitious and singularly focused on kind of, doing what's right by her people, depending on the time of who she regards as her people, because that changed over the course of Clone Wars. And so she is not the type of person who would be eager to relinquish that to somebody else. So yeah, it's
he's like, I don't want it.
She's my queen. I don't want it.
She's my queen. I don't want it.
So I do want to point out that the character that we've been referring to as Bo-Katan's sidekick, her name is Casca Reeves.
Okay.
That's the actress's name. What's the character's name?
Her minion.
No.
No, that's the
character's name.
Oh, is it?
Sasha Banks.
Casca Reeves.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I don't know wrestling, so
that's fine.
I
like
kind of do.
There were a lot of new. I mean, one of the things that has been done really well this season is that they've brought stuff from other Star Wars canon forward in a way that feels natural to the show, but they've also brought its own characters into it, and it remembers the characters it brought in from last season, like Cara Dune, like Fennec Shand. So they really kind of nailed it with this blend of old canon and new canon.
Yeah.
And again, like I've said this to you guys before, but I'll say it on here. Like, how foolish do I feel thinking last season that they had wasted Ming-Na Wen? And now she's going to be a huge part of Star Wars because she's not only going to, headline the Book of Boba Fett alongside Tamora Morrison, she is also going to be a character in The Bad Batch, which remains to be seen whether that's going to be just a guest recurring role or if she's part of the cast on there. But I'm really interested in that because I think they're going to continue young Boba Fett's story from Clone Wars on The Bad Batch. And could we see the beginnings of that relationship in that show and how it informs them now? Because you could take it as Boba Fett just discovered her on Tatooine and she's loyal to him because she saved his life. But I think the opportunity might be there to actually show that, no, they maybe know each other from back in the day. And I think that would be interesting.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that little snippet said so much in just so few words. He's kind of Boba Fett has kind of been following what Din Djarin's been doing because he was on Tatooine when we were there for the I don't know, I can't remember the name of the episode, but when we were introduced to Fennec Shand. Because he was there, he was obviously following them, he followed them out there and found her like she was. And then we see in the Marshal, that final scene where he's just on the dune and you just see him just from the back and you're like, is that Boba Fett? Is that him?
Yes.
Or is that a clone? Is it? I thought
I was wondering if it was a clone meaning.
I thought he died in the Sarlacc pit, just those little, just weaving him in slowly like that. It's just masterful how they brought him back. Which,
by the way, like last season when we saw, just him from like the boots and stuff, and people were saying that's got to be Boba Fett. I did not want it to be Boba Fett. I was like, no, he's dead. That's just going to be, that's not creative. It's got to be somebody new that we're going to meet. But then the way they pulled it off this season, they proved me wrong. Like, it's great that it was Boba Fett. And obviously the fruits of that are now being borne out by the new show we're getting, and the two of them together, that final shot of them,
what an entrance.
Like I told you guys before, it's like a total pose shot, but it's great. It's like I'm fine with that. It's just the way she's got the bottle, and and
I got big like Conan the Barbarian seated on his throne.
Yes. Which is funny because we were talking about the music earlier and how it's a sort of a blend between what John Williams was doing and Ennio Morricone. But I also have always heard a lot of Basil Polidoris, who did Conan the Barbarian. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's influence from that too. So the fact that final shot is really reminiscent of Conan sets my geek heart aflame.
My little geek heart just fluttered, grew 10 times.
My goodness.
But man, oh gosh, my mind is drawing a blank. Who took over from Boba Fett? The guy, Bib Fortuna. Man, did he get fat?
Yeah, he did.
He was like
a few short years.
It probably comes with the job. I mean,
yeah. I mean, look at the
Twi'lek's girl there at his feet. He was trying to rock the Boba. I mean, the Jabba the Hutt vibe, but kind of.
Maybe we will see Boba Fett turn into Boba Fett. I mean,
Boba Fett.
Which, by the way, I don't know if it was you, Stephen. It was somebody who mentioned it in like a Zoom chat or something. But now I freaking heard that McClunky, and I'm just like,
it was me. Yes.
It was you. Why did you ever draw my attention to that?
He says McClunky right before he gets shot.
The hell? Now I got to go back and watch it again.
Yep, it's definitely there.
It's like now it's even canon outside of the special editions. Yep. I just can't deal with that.
Did anybody else catch the McClunky in there? Do you know what I'm talking about, Cecilia?
I don't think so. Yeah.
For those of us who don't, Stephen.
Okay, so
pontificate.
When Disney put when they put all the stuff on Disney Plus like a year ago, they put all the Star Wars films on there, and they had a most recent update, and the Han shot first scene, they was Han shot first, and then Greedo shot, and they shot at the same time, and there's this weird like move with his head, But in the most recent update, right before that, Greedo stops and he says McClunky. And then the shoot happens for no apparent reason whatsoever.
I'm telling you, George Lucas is just trolling us now.
It's the only explanation. Because it's like that scene is worse with that in there, and you went back to add it in. I don't get it. Why McClunky? What difference does it make? But now Bib Fortuna says it right before he gets shot. So
it's a thing.
Yeah, don't ask me. But when I heard that, I couldn't stop laughing, actually. I mean, it was an awesome post-credit scene, and like it makes me really look forward to the Book of Boba Fett as something like, that Star Wars Underworld show that we've been wanting when we first started talking about making Star Wars TV shows.
Yeah. Who knows, John? You may get your wish. So you may get your wish. Your fondest wish.
Well, no, because we're talking about different periods in the timeline. So I don't know.
But yeah,
well, we got the Bad Batch too, so there's hope.
There's a whole lot of more Star Wars coming, and I can't imagine that we won't be talking about a lot of it as it continues to come out. And I will say this too, like I'm not here to crap on anybody's experience with Star Wars. You can love it all. You can love parts of it, whatever. I have not loved it all, especially recently. Like, I enjoyed The Mandalorian last year, but the last few movies have not quite landed for me as well as I had hoped. This season of The Mandalorian reignited the fan in me, the Star Wars fan, and it made me go, I really do need to go back to the Clone Wars, and I really want to theorize about what's coming next, and I'm really excited to see what's the next thing going to happen. So kudos to Filoni and Favreau and that whole crew they put together over there. They did it. They brought Star Wars back from the brink for me.
Well,
Not
if
that-
you if you look at the slate of stuff they have coming up, it's literally Star Wars for everybody.
Mhm.
Because I don't think that there's like, you've got to be able to find something that you're going to respond to with all of these different shows coming out. So, yeah.
John, I think RR wants to know what is your fondest wish, because they knew.
No, it was the one show that was rumored that didn't get announced, which was the Darth Maul and Kira show. That's Kira played by Emilia Clarke, not me going on about Kira Knightley. But they are going to have the Lando show, so it makes me wonder if they're actually going to combine those, and if that's set around the same time as Solo, then maybe the Darth Maul storyline will intersect with that, or maybe they just haven't announced it yet. We thought they were done, and then all of a sudden, the end of Mandalorian, they announced yet another show. So
yeah,
who knows? We'll see.
I am excited for Andor, as well as Ahsoka and the one with Obi-Wan. But Andor, it has a special feeling for me because it's Diego Luna.
Right.
As the main character. I don't have a crush on Diego Luna, by the way, but I do appreciate. I am really happy that he got this role because he's a fellow Mexican like myself, and it really makes me root for him for this role. And what he did in Rogue One, I loved it. He had a very, he had a very special chemistry with I don't remember the name of the actress. The main character.
Yeah, the character is named Jin.
With Jin.
Remember the actress's name.
Yeah, he had a very great chemistry with her. We obviously know what happened to them, but we will get to see these things that maybe the Republic has had to do that are not necessarily morally cool.
You may have to work with some sketchy characters.
Yes, and Andor, I believe Andor can give us this.
I will say, I really do like Rogue One, and particularly I think the last third of that film. If there was one thing I would have wished, it would have been for some more development of some of the characters, which is why I'm so looking forward to the Cassian Andor show. I think it's really going to flesh out that time period and a lot of those characters and the story. So yeah, I'm pumped for that as well.
Yeah, maybe see some Force users who aren't Jedi.
So
I would love to see that. Yeah,
me too. That would be actually really cool. They've done some of that in the animated stuff with like Inquisitors, and they've had the witches.
And a reference that you probably won't get, but a lot of that whole dynamic about the Force is not just for the Jedi was spoken by the character of the Bendu in Star Wars Rebels, which actually informed a lot of the stuff that I thought Luke said in Last Jedi, which people don't often connect those things up, but I felt a lot of similarities there. So it would be interesting to explore that idea of you can be strong in the Force, but not necessarily be a Jedi.
Yeah. I would love to see that. And when I mentioned that whole final scene in the Mandalorian, made me question a lot of things. I mean, that was one of those. I mean, what if there was a character like that? For this reason, I mean, what does it have to do with me? I mean, I would love to see that and connect it to Grogu's story in some way.
I'll take whatever I can get that's got Grogu in it.
Yeah, because I mean, for example, we know what happens to Luke's academy in the future. I mean, and we all question, we all had that question in our minds. What will happen to Grogu? Will he survive another school shooting or not? I don't know.
Wow.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
I mean,
Wow.
I don't know. I mean, it really makes you wonder how he escaped. I mean, maybe he will be helped by someone that is not Force. I mean, is not a Jedi, or maybe it's a Force user.
Which I have to say, this was also part of the reason why I was sort of so convinced that they were going to cast a new actor as Luke, because actually there's a lot of great story material they could mine from that side of the story during these years. Go into Luke's Jedi Academy, see what's going on with Leia and Han during this time. But if they're hesitant to tackle that by recasting those parts, then I hope they consider doing it as maybe an animated series or something like that, because I would love to see. I mean, we talk about, okay, move on from the main characters, but still, if they're doing all these other shows, you might as well have something about that, because there's a lot we could find out and a lot of good stories that could be told.
Yeah, I'd love to see Han and Chewie's adventures in the corporate sector, which is like a totally different area of the galaxy from the, the core worlds and the outer rims. That's a whole other section of the galaxy that they haven't explored. So, I mean, I would love to see that. I mean, unlike a lot of people, I did like Solo. I loved
it. I mean,
I don't care what they say. I don't care. That's fine. If you didn't like
it was unfairly punished by. It was unfairly punished by the second movie of the new.
I think a lot of people were taking their frustration on Last Jedi, earned or unearned, on Solo, which I thought was unfair. And Steven, it's okay. We can still be friends.
Yeah, we're still friends. I mean, it was a great heist film, in the true sense of the word.
I'm not saying anything bad about Solo. I'm just like, meh.
What I love so much about Solo is the fact that it's the one where it doesn't feel like the stakes are saving the entire galaxy. It's a story within the universe that, it has its own stakes. And it was for me, it was very special for me because I saw it on the weekend of Con of Thrones. It was the last thing I did after that last night. I was at the Alamo House movie theater like early in the morning, and when I loved the entire movie. I thought the whole movie was so much fun, but then you get that Darth Maul scene at the end, which it was the first step in connecting all these different areas of Star Wars. And so I jumped out of my seat when that happened, and I remember I went back to my hotel room. First thing I did was I bought the soundtrack on my phone, and I love the movie. It's great. Which, by the way, if anybody's interested, they did just release an extended soundtrack album for that film. Of course I bought it.
Pirate that bitch.
Do you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Weird.
I don't think it's me.
No, it's absolutely me. I'm just not sure if you could hear it or not. Does anybody else have anything to say about these episodes?
I just want to say, despite like my initial, issues with the final episode, like I've made peace with the stuff that I had issues with, and I love that finale. And I think that this season was extraordinary. I think that the premiere was one of the best things they've ever done on the show, and the show just kept doing amazing things all season. And the chills I get from that final episode, just that's not going away for some time. I that like they were nominated for an Emmy last year. If they aren't nominated again for this season, which to me was, 10 times better, then I'm gonna cry foul because it was extraordinary. I loved it, and there, I'm done.
Yeah, we may see something like Cedric Gladiator Horde mentioned, because there's a upcoming series called The Acolyte.
Mm-hmm.
So we may get to see some of that then, because that's going to be set during the High Republic era. So, hey.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah, I
It'll
can't
be
wait.
cool.
Okay, well, I also don't have anything left to say. So, and we're at 2.5 hours. So, like, I'm impressed with myself that my bladder hasn't ruptured yet. I've had this much coffee, and I've got to go to the restroom real soon. So
that's a mighty fine. Mug there.
Yes, that's a beautiful coffee mug you have there, Stephen.
sanrixian.threadless.com. All right.
We need that on a banner.
We really should. I probably will next week. Well, I won't be. Speaking of, I won't be here next week. I might pop in. It's just going to depend. But John and Nessie are getting the car keys again. Going to keep this train rolling forward while I go off and watch my older brother get married.
And we're going to install a buzzer so that when you pop up in the stream, I can't say anything negative or I get shocked. No, seriously. Sorry, if you guys don't get that joke, just go back, watch the last.
So yeah.
Thanks, Leaf.
I know, John. You've got what movie y'all doing next week?
Wonder Woman 1984, and then the week after that it'll be a Dangerous Method, which I think Aemy and I are both really looking forward to. Jared's going to join us. That combines, I think, two of her greatest loves, which is we share Keira Knightley, but also patriarchy.
Okay.
I think I've heard of it.
Nessie, you got a Bleep the Patriarchy coming up this week, right?
Yep, this week on Wednesday, regular time. The last episode was a little early to accommodate our European friends and guests. So we're going to be back at the regular scheduled time on the 30th to talk about transphobia and turfism with Low the Links and ITM. And then January, Merlin and with John Webster, and Morgan Le Fay with Aaron M.
Look forward to all of that. And Cecilia, you've got stuff coming up soon too.
Yeah, I do. My podcast is now again up and running. The last episode that I made was precisely about Mandalorian. And remember that my channel and my podcast is in Spanish. So if you are Spanish speaking or are just purely curious, you are welcome to check it out. And the good news is that in the near future, very near future, I am going to introduce some English episodes. So with some guests that you may already know. I'm not going to say names, but you can probably figure it out.
That wouldn't be me. I would never.
So I'm very excited about it. A little bit nervous because it's not the same to host than to be a guest in a podcast or in a show that is not your primary language. But let's see how it goes. And the episode for next week is going to air in the 31st of December. It's going to be about Love Actually.
Yep.
Minor course correction. I misspoke. We're not going to be going back to the regular time on Wednesday. It's going to be Wednesday at 3 p.m. because we have a European guest. I'd forgotten that we had to coordinate across multiple time zones, California and Europe, and it's 3
Yeah.
o'clock is what we settled on. So
9
it's going to be
hours
a little
difference.
earlier.
Yes.
3 o'clock Eastern, USA.
3 o'clock Eastern. It'll all be in the link, but it's going to be
Yeah.
in the afternoon.
And I will also say, go check out Mary's podcast with Clint, the Learned Hands, and links to all of that is down in the description for everybody's Twitter, podcast links, YouTube channels. Yeah, go check all of that out. And since I won't even be here next week, and I won't see some of you before even then, Happy New Year. It's New Year's this week. Everybody, celebrate responsibly, but vigorously. And yeah, hope to see you all again. Might be here next week. I'm 50-50, but if not, I'll see you all in 2 weeks for whatever we decided to do then.
I do want to just drop one more thing because I forgot to even mention it. But of course, at the end of next month, and that'll be on January 30th, on my channel, we'll be talking about Pan's Labyrinth, and I will have this person, Steven Stark, and this lovely person, Cecilia. They will both be on there with me and Aemy, so don't miss that. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Great movie. Okay,
Be sure to read about Spanish.
Spanish Civil War.
Yes, the Franco Spain. You will find some really, really, really great insights from the movie.
Oh, I just got to throw this up real quick. The gentleman in Nessie shot looks a lot like the husband of Reflective Rambling's co-worker or father of her friend. Reflective Rambling, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I see no gentleman on screen with Nessie. That's all I'm going to say. I see no gentleman in that shot.
No, none.
All right. Well, guys, we love you. Come back next week for John and Nessie's shenanigans, whatever they get up to. And yeah, you know what it is. Until next time, peace and be excellent to each other.